Good morning, everyone. Jim Laird joining you live from Diriomo, Nicaragua. Let me get the live stream going here on Instagram. All right, looks like we're live on Instagram. So if you're joining me on Instagram, I can't really read your comments here. So feel free to comment, but I'm not going to be able to see it. So got a great topic today. We're going to go over a clip from I guess I could consider a mentor of mine, somebody that I've learned a lot from, and it still influences the way I think and the way I operate even today. And I'll start off with one of the reasons I love being a strength coach or personal trainer, or all those sort of things, is the wide variety of people I worked with. I'm kind of unique because you could come to my gym and there would be everything from an 85-year-old lady who's having problems getting up and down the stairs, to a high level college athlete who was getting ready for his season, or a basketball player, to the women that I trained that competed in powerlifting. Every different shape, size, type of athlete, volleyball players, high jumpers. I mean, I had it all. I had people in there that hated working out, and then I had people in there that loved it, and everybody got along and had a good time. It was a great, great environment. One of my biggest passions is young athlete development, youth development. I've worked with a ton when I was in Lexington. The whole time I was in Lexington, I mean, I spent 6 or 7 years at one of the biggest high schools in Lexington, working with a number of their sports team, particularly men's basketball. I had middle school all the way to middle, seventh grade, all the way up to 12th grade in a basketball program. I have up to 60, 70 athletes at a time, with very limited weight room access, developing these kids. And so I know the challenges of working with, club teams, big groups of athletes. I mean, that's how I started as a strength coach, and that's how I met this guy. But I love, the challenges of working with large groups of athletes, particularly today, is incredibly high, because most of the kids today aren't coming from a good phys ed program. They aren't coming from manual labor on a farm, so they're not very resilient. So it's a totally different ball game than when I first got into the industry in the in the mid '90s. Even then, when I was a GA at the University of Arizona, I was shocked at these high level athletes and how horrible they were in the weight room. So I met this gentleman at the University of Arizona. His name's Jim Windler. He's the author of 531, which is a great, great, very highly adaptable program. Can be used by somebody at any level, really. And maybe one day I'll review that program, but it can be manipulated in many different ways. And Jim has played a pivotal role in my philosophy. I remember it was probably, I don't know, 2006, maybe 2007. Jim was the reason I moved to Lexington. I met Jim at Arizona. He kind of got me interested in powerlifting, and he was getting ready for a powerlifting meet. I was living in Aspen at the time. I was going back and forth between Aspen and Tucson. And Jim was getting ready for a powerlifting meet, and I decided to go out there and help him. It was right around 9/11. I actually was driving to his house when 9/11 happened in 2001. And I ended up staying, and I ended up sleeping on Jim's floor for like a year. So I've spent a lot of time with Jim, got to watch him train a lot of people, a lot of athletes. And I was very impressed at how well here's this really hardcore dude who was a master of progression and regression, like taking someone who's brand new and teaching them, step one, step two, step three. So that was a huge influence on me. He was. And then I remember we used to chat all the time. He worked for Elite FTS, and he used to answer the phones for them. And then he basically would do work on their forum. It was a big deal back then. And I remember calling Jim and talking to him because I was a little frustrated. A lot of people think that personal training is like this glorified, amazing thing. And it is. You get to hang out in the weight room all day, but I think trainers get bored before clients do. And I was kind of at a stage in my career where I was really like, what do I do next? I've taken a bunch of different certifications, and I was kind of like, where do I go from here? And Jim told me, he's like, dude, just become the best beginner coach possible. Don't make things any more complicated than they need to be. Most of these people are never going to go past intermediate stage. Just make it fun, work with them, keep it engaging, particularly the high school kids I was working with. And that stuck with me. And even to this day, I'm working with Dr. Stillman in a medical practice. How can I make this experience simpler? Very rarely do I ever run into a situation where we need to make things more complex. It's usually simplifying things and giving people things they can actually do consistently over time. So Jim played a huge role in that. And so this clip that he shared, he now basically he works, he sells his brand, which he does an incredible job of. But he works at he's the strength coach at the local high school, where I believe his kids play football too, or was one boy. I can't remember, but he's done an incredible job of bringing the challenges of working with a large group of athletes to the table. In this clip, we're going to look at, he talks about how you don't want to chase maximum weights for young athletes. And, he works with football players. And this is something I've seen throughout my entire career. One of the biggest clients I had, a kid that I took from a broken back to a Division I scholarship. I got him as a client because he broke his back doing a straddle deadlift with like a whole bunch of stupid weight. He fractured his spine in the weight room. So a lot of the kids that I trained over the years were kids that got hurt in the weight room, right? Chasing these big numbers. And that's not what athletic development, you're not trying to make them great weightlifters. You're trying to make them great athletes. It's a totally different animal. So I've worked with all the way through my career, big groups of athletes. And I love the fact that Jim is bringing the challenges of working with groups of athletes, giving them things that, building habits. I love he's talking about these things. So let's go to this clip. This is Jim, and let's hit. Actually, I need to share my screen first. That would be helpful. So share screen. And so the title of this is "The Goal is Not to Increase Weight." So let's hit play on this bad boy.
7 or 8 years or however long I've been at London. The goal wasn't to increase the training mass. I think that's something I've really started to realize. The goal is to build the toughness, the resilience, and speed of the human body projectile that's on the football field. So I'm not terribly concerned with the 1-rep maxes or anything like that. I'm just concerned about building the armor and building a kick-ass athlete on the field. And that doesn't always mean that we're going to load heavier. All right. And as soon as I realized that, it makes things much easier because the kids are always fresh. The kids' reps are always awesome. No one's getting hurt in the weight room. And when the kids go run and jump and do all the other stuff, whether that's in season or out of season, they're always ready for it. So just understand that. Okay. And that's one of the things I've learned over the 7 or 8 years or however long.
So that is incredibly insightful. A lot of coaches don't understand that. They look at the here's the thing. If you make kids lift well and do reps well, they are going to get stronger over time. But most strength coaches will basically judge how successful their program is by how strong the kid is, by their bench max, by their squat max, by their deadlift max. Well, if their max is with really shitty form, and they're having to arch really hard and it's just a total catastrophe, what good is that? And then not only that, you'll take these hyped up artificial maxes and they won't adjust them. Jim talks about the training max, which he generally takes, I believe, like something like 90%. He'll take 10% off or 15% off. Sometimes I would even take 20% off if you are going to go by a max, so that you have a training max, which is less than the actual max. Because a lot of times these programs, I've been there, I've observed this, and you'll have these kids are all in a circle and they're screaming at each other, and this kid ends up squatting a whole bunch of weight, and then they end up using that as where they get the percentages from. But that kid is overreaching, and what happens is the weights he ends up using in his training end up just grinding the hell out of him because it's way too heavy. So Jim will always take a little off to make sure. Jim's more concerned about what the reps look like and they're clean and they're fast. And as soon as the form goes to hell, he backs them off and he makes them do the lifts well. And that's the way it should be done with anyone, really, young athletes in particular. You're going to get better results in the long run because of that. And Jim is really concerned about building up capacity, adding muscle mass, adding athleticism, into his warm-ups. He adds athleticism, lots of sprinting, lots of sled dragging. So it's a great approach. And there's a lot of, I've been in a lot of high school weight rooms. I was hired many times to come in and assess high school weight rooms, and it becomes a powerlifting competition, and these kids are not powerlifters. So I love the fact that Jim is bringing this to the forefront. He's talking about these things. It needs to be talked about. Young athletes need to be doing a wide variety of tasks, learning the basics in weightlifting or the basic powerlifting lifts are good. Learning how to squat, learning how to do the basic movements. The good thing about any program is you can adjust these things. Like if you're working with a baseball player, I'm going to have them, squat with a safety squat bar, or I'm going to have them do kettlebell squat, or I'm going to have them do a front squat, because I don't want them pitting their shoulder blades together back like that. I'm not going to bench press a kid who's playing a lot of baseball, maybe a little bit, but not a ton. I'm going to change the way I might trap bar deadlift. I might do some different things. So, a lot of people get married to squat, bench, deadlift, power clean. They have to do those things. You don't necessarily have to do those things. And really, really appreciating quality of movement and doing things well and efficiently is much more important over time than chasing big numbers for high school kids, young athletes in general. Even the college kids I worked with, most of them, we backed the weights way off. We needed to adjust the way they were doing the weights, focus on, doing the reps well and cleaner. And guess what? When they all went back and got tested, they got stronger. And I was always teach my kids, I'm like, okay, just do something that feels good. There's no reason to get all hyped up and lift this huge weight. And I worked with a kid. Unfortunately, he ended up hurting himself. He was a really good linebacker. He was probably he went to a 1AA school in Ohio. And I remember he would train with me, and I would always tell him he'd get up close to 500 pounds on the bench. And I'd be like, dude, there's no need to go any heavier. And he's like, well, I want to get the bench max record at, whatever school, it was Youngstown. And I told him, I said, man, that's stupid. You're not a power lifter. When you're done your football career, you can go and do that. Right. But there's no point. What's the point of getting this number on the wall? Because he was he was an incredible linebacker, big, fast. He was probably 6'3", 6'4", like an Urlacher type guy. And sure enough, I told him, I said, don't do it. So he goes for it. He goes for this max, ends up tearing his pec. And that was pretty much the end of his career. That was it. It was over. So you're an athlete. You're not a weightlifter. You're not a power lifter. So those things are fine. You can do them, but it's how you play on the field that matters. It's not what you lift in the weight room. I've been around plenty of guys that sucked in the weight room who were incredible on the field. And I've been around plenty of guys that were freaking kick-ass in the weight room and they couldn't play or shit. So, and there comes a point when you chase maximum strength, there comes a point where maximum strength actually becomes a liability. Why do you think that the NFL is not filled with powerlifters? Right? Because there comes a point, if you want to be truly as strong as you can be, it's going to take away from your ability to move. Right? So there's just a few things to think about. Dr. Stillman and I are going to be doing a live on Monday. We're going to talk about Ozempic, semaglutide, all the GLP-1 agonists that are really popular these days. So stay tuned for that. You can go to either one of our YouTube channels and set a reminder. This is a subject I'm really passionate about. Now I'm working in a medical practice, so I don't really get to deal with large groups of high school kids anymore or college kids. I still stay in touch with a lot of the athletes I worked with and help them if they have questions and things like that. But youth development, is a humongous, like it's a passion of mine, because I see these poor kids and they're getting thrown into these training programs they have no business doing. So make sure if you are working with young athletes, you're taking it to the level they're at. You're doing a lot of bear crawls and carries and sled pushes and general physical preparedness type stuff. And there's nothing wrong with lifting weights, so make sure it's done in a way that is progressive and is at the level that the person is at and puts them in a good position. You don't want to reinforce and strengthen positions that you don't want showing up on the football field or the athletic field. So there's a few thoughts for you. I hope you have a great day. Give Jim a follow, especially if you work with young athletes or if you're interested in, getting stronger. His 5-3-1 program is it's so simple, it's genius. And I've used his template for years and years and years. His basic template is wonderful. It can be adjusted with exercise selection. You want to add your goal is to add muscle mass. You do the basic lifts and then you add more accessory work. It's a really simple program. It's great. And I think it should be the foundation of most athletes programs. Most athletes should be able to do the basic lifts at a decent amount of weight. And then you figure out what they need the most. And then you work from there. But there's a few thoughts on that. Hope you guys have a great day. It's Friday. So we'll see you again when I'm live with Dr. Stillman on Monday. Thanks for tuning in. Go over to Stillman Wellness if you'd like to support us. Join one of our memberships. It's $1 a day. www.stillmanwellness.com. Have yourself a great day.